Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our chamber seminar, Sleep Matters. Our speaker today is Tim Crowley. Tim is the head strength and conditioning coach at Montverde Academy and is the owner of TC2 Coaching and Consulting, LLC. He was a 2008 Olympic triathlon coach. He coached athletes to world championships, Ironman championships, and numerous national championships at the elite level. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this morning. Really, this is a topic that I've been working on for the last year in terms of reading, researching, and we're going to get into this, dig into this. And first thing I want to do is as you come up, I'm sure everyone may have questions or something, so we can kind of put those in the chat. If I can answer them during the presentation, I will. If not, I'm going to make sure we leave plenty of time at the end to answer all of your questions. So let's get started. I just gave a quick bio of myself. So you've gone this, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I'm going to kind of tell you how I got into sleep. Well, first off, what you're going to learn today is, the importance of sleep and how it affects your performance. And we talk performance: professional, athletic, academic, and mental health. And this really kind of started looking at it from an athletic standpoint, but it is quickly, I realized that it's a driver, and we're going to go into this a little bit deeper. It's really a driver for all the things that we do in our life. Unfortunately, many people don't give it enough, respect or credibility. We spend about a third of our lives sleeping, yet science and research is just starting to look at now at the impacts, and there's a lot that we just don't know. I honestly believe in terms of, peak performance, whether that's athletic or professional, this is going to be the next area of high performance. So we're learning stuff all the time, and I think this is going to be important. And what I hope to do is kind of give you some ideas and give you some ways of creating some systems, routines, and habits to really, impact, both your life and those people around you. So we're looking at this presentation. I'm looking at it from a couple different angles. The one is personal for you, but also as business leaders, you're in charge and leaders of other people, so you can help facilitate some of this information. And I'm sure many of you have families, and we're going to talk a little bit about especially kids, teenagers, and how sleep impacts all the things in their life. We talk about why is it important. So I'm going to give you the three parts that we're going to go through. Is going to be, the why is important and some of the factual stuff. Then we're going to dig into the hurdles, roadblocks, why you may not be getting enough sleep. And, there's always, when I talk to people about this, they'll say, that sounds really great, I'd love to do it, but, and then comes up the hurdles and the roadblocks, why they can't get into it. So we'll kind of discuss some of those things. And then some of the ways you can implement into your life to improve both the quality and the quantity of sleep. And one of the misconceptions is people think, oh, I want to sleep more, that 8 hours is the gold standard, and it's not, and it ranges very widely. So understanding what you need and then how you can do it, and do it on a consistent basis. And they find that quality of sleep may be more important than the actual quantity. Okay, we already discussed, it impacts you and those around you. And then a little bit, how did I get involved with this? It really kind of started about 10, 12 years ago when I was coaching a lot of elite world-class triathletes. And we were always looking for, those marginal gains, those one or two things, within the legal bounds of sport to get a performance advantage. And one of those things was, you'll see in the top, the Zeo Monitor. This came out about 2009, 2010. Unfortunately, the company is no longer around, but the technology now is coming because they were really way ahead of their time. So we started experimenting with this. It's kind of a clock radio that had a headband that actually measured the electrical activity of your brain and sleep. And so what we were able to get was, time sleep, but also the different phases of sleep: deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep, and also would give us a sleep score, which is a combination of quantity and quality of sleep. So we started playing around with that and really found that very valuable. Then we kind of, kept using it a little bit. We went into heart rate variability, which I'll discuss a little bit later, as a measure of recovery. And then we kind of got away. And then a couple of years ago, I started looking at, as a master's athlete, I still want to be competitive in triathlon and endurance events. So I started doing some research as to how can I, as I'm getting older, still be competitive? How do we work on that performance piece? And that led me to sleep. Was one of the, quality strength training was one thing I came across, and then sleep. So I started researching it, reading more, and found some really valuable information. But on top of that, what I also started to see was how it impacts young athletes, especially like the high school age athletes. And since, I'm in charge of strength and conditioning and sport performance at Montverde, this became even more interesting. So the two areas that I was interested in, this converged. And so that really led me for the last probably year and a half to read everything that I could find. Then I went and got a online as a sleep coaching certification to not only understand the facts of it, but how do you help people, manage this and implement these skills. And then, the key drivers of this was obviously athletics, academics, the mental health issues, all these rolled into one. And especially in this past year, all these things became, really, really important. And so this was just started to drive this. And then I realized the things that I learned and things that could be helping people can go beyond that. The adult athletes that I coach, triathletes that I coach, I started noticing that oftentimes I would see comments like, I didn't do the workout or couldn't do the workout today because I didn't get a good night's sleep. And this kept coming up with across the board. And I realized this is important for everyone. And kind of conclusion I came now is that everybody has something that they can improve upon in this area. Some may be a little, some may be more. And the nice thing is any little advantage, any little thing that you can move forward is going to help people dramatically. And the hope is as they start to see the benefits, they'll want them to do even more. So we started looking at world-class athletes, and you see some of these quotes here. And this came out of an article. And the great thing is, probably one of the reasons I put on here, the third one down, sleep is half of my training. Jared Shoemaker is actually a Claremont resident. And I coached Jared for 5 years as his primary triathlon coach. And now we're probably, I think, 12 to 13 years as his strength coach. And even though he's retired, I still work with him currently. And I should give him credit because he was the one that introduced me to Claremont and big driver as to why we moved here. But you'll see across these world-class athletes how important sleep is. Yet at the same time, we see in the athletic community that people are always talking about, bragging about how little sleep they get. We see this in the business world. We see this in the athletic world. And really the top athletes now are figuring out how important this is. I mean, I've seen some recent things that, quotes that LeBron James, and I know LeBron James and Russell Wilson, both of them probably spend upwards of $1 million a year to facilitate recovery. That's how important recovery is to them as a top level athlete to extend their careers. And the big thing about sleep is that it is probably the best mode of recovery, physically and mentally, that we have. And it's free. But we don't see a lot about it because you can't sell a device, a product, or something else that goes with it. In the endurance world, we've got these Normatec boots, which is compression boots, and we've got them at school and kids use them all the time. But I think, oh, I'm going to recover. But still, the top number one thing for recovery is sleep. And that's a thing that really has driven this whole topic for me. Here's a quick look here. Some of those same athletes on here on this chart, and you'll see that, the dotted line here is at 7 hours, and you'll see most of them are above them. And this presentation was actually done a while, put this together, this actual chart was done a while ago. And just, ironically, you see the one person who's way under that happens to be Tiger Woods. And, and some of the stuff I read the other day about his crash, they're wondering if sleep deprivation might have been one of the particular causes of that. But you'll see that a lot of these athletes get a lot of sleep. I know endurance athletes can get upwards of 10 hours of sleep at night, and then even take a 2-hour nap. And so when Jared was saying is half of his time is sleeping, he wasn't joking. Okay, when it comes to peak performance, here's all the things that sleep plays. And we look at all these things are like, reaction times, motor function, motivation, focus, stress regulation, muscle recovery, sprint performance, muscle glycogen, sparing, glucose metabolism, memory and learning, injury risk, illness rates, and unwanted weight gain. So this covers a lot. And obviously, if people start to improve this, a lot of these areas are going to improve. And you can see a lot of them aren't even sports related, so this applies for everybody. From a health and performance standpoint, you see that sleep is has equal equal footing with exercise and nutrition in terms of health, and we can even put in the center there, in place of health, we can put athletic performance in there. And some charts that I've seen have sleep being actually a bigger part, and I'm kind of leaning in that direction now, because what I'm seeing is sleep has a huge impact on our exercise or our training, because if we're recovered and we're feeling good, one, it's going to help us get out the door. It's going to help us, have a more positive attitude and train a little bit harder, get a little bit more out of it. And also, we talk about mood and motivation. It's also going to help drive our nutritional choices as well. So I think sleep might actually, hold a bigger part. So if we scale these, that would be a much bigger circle, or at least a little bit bigger circle than both exercise and nutrition. So we look at, influences and wins and losses in sport performance. And again, I'll talk a lot about sport performance, but you can equally translate this into, professional performance, business performance. So they coincide. But again, we got sleep, hydration, conditioning, mental preparation, and nutrition. These are all the things that influence, a person, an athlete, for optimal performance. Some of these charts here, the next couple, are going to talk about high school students, but what I'm seeing is these same percentages really apply across the board to adults as well. When we look at sleep time, most people, here it's like 70% of these students don't get sufficient sleep. And I've been working with a lot of our teams at Montverde, and I'm seeing the exact same thing. They're just not getting enough sleep, and there's a whole other bunch of reasons for that, and everything from, I got projects or homework which maybe they procrastinated on, but that's really no different for any of us, in terms of there's always a reason why we may not be getting to bed on time, or we have other things that we have to do and it's not becoming a priority. Big one, chances of injuries. Injuries skyrocket when people aren't getting enough sleep. Okay, and that goes back to reaction time, focus, motivation, muscle recovery. And then these are both, can be applied to both overuse and traumatic injuries from getting collisions and stuff. But if we're not getting enough sleep, we open ourselves up to much higher rates of injuries, which impacts everything that we do in our lives. GPA, again, across the board. I mean, this is a matter of focus and be able to be productive and getting things done. GPA suffers when people are not getting enough sleep. This is one of the landmark studies they did in basketball. And the reason for this is that they were able to do this in a very closed environment. So it was a legitimate research study. And out at Stanford is where they have a lot of the sleep research going on for many years. And so what they did here, here's a study, I kind of summarize it for you. So what they did was they had these athletes, and they found out how much the average hours of sleep they were getting. And then they gave them more. So then their average went from 6.5 to 8.5. And they gave them about 10 hours of sleep. So our time that they could stay in bed each day. And they wanted to see what the impact was. And the impact was pretty profound, is that their free throws, went up, over just about 9%, between 9 and 10%. The 3-point shooting went up, over 10%. And then their sprint time decreased substantially, so they got faster. And one of the other things that came out of this research study, sorry about that. Let me just, one of the things that came out of this research study was that they allowed the players, that time to sleep. And one of the things that they reported that was the most significant was that they just, really enjoyed the time around each other and around the coaches. So it became very important that the quality of the practices, the quality of the team, was just as important as the outcomes of their shooting performances and their sprint performances. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big myths is quantity of sleep is more important than quality. And we'll talk about how this can be measured. Some of the effects of chronic sleep restrictions on athletic performance. You see maximum power output decreases substantially. Our muscular endurance goes down, and also our energy expenditure. So if we could relate this, to the endurance athletes that I work with, is that not only is, power is a big thing in any sport, but also muscular endurance. You talk about runners, triathletes, and cyclists. That's a 3% decrease. And so the question becomes, what I'm always dealing with is, people have busy lives, and it all sounds well and good. It's like, okay, Tim, this is wonderful, but how do I get it all in? How do I got work, I got family, I want to be healthy and exercise, and now you're telling me I need to sleep more. So finding those balance points is really essential. I look at, like, maybe do we train less, or how do we become more efficient in the things that we're doing to get out the door? I mean, David, we were talking before, is that all the things you got to do to get out the door to get on your bike. So how do we streamline those so we can get our exercise and carve out a little bit more time? So we'll go over some of those strategies as well. But again, we also talk sleep quality and mental health. This is a major issue. Sleep quality may actually be the most important factor predicting good mental health. If we sleep too much, it's not good. If we sleep too little, it's not good. So finding that sweet spot for most people. More than sleep, slept, physical activity, diet, according to to some of the new research that's out there. Okay, so this was a huge driver, and I think that's not just for for kids, but also adults. And I'm seeing this, especially this past year, it's become, I think the mental health issue has become much more prevalent, and sleep is, can be a major factor in having people have, more healthier, more productive lives. A lot of people are sleep deprived. This was a study done with college athletes, and it didn't matter whether they were Division I, II, or III. You can see that they weren't getting enough. And the interesting thing I saw from here, surprisingly, is that it was a much higher percentage for women than men. I honestly don't know why that is the case. But we see it's roughly 10% across the board. But both are not getting enough sleep and feel like they're sleep deprived. Okay, so now I'm going to understand a little bit about how this all works. So some of the science behind it. So on this chart here, what you'll see is, let's say it's sleep pressure. So when we wake up in the morning, we feel, hopefully we're waking up feeling rather refreshed, but throughout the day, we build up sleep pressure. Okay, and what that does, it reaches a point where we then get sleepy, and then we go to sleep. So if that sleep pressure is not building up enough, then it's very difficult to go to sleep, even if we want to go to sleep on time. And then once we go to sleep, you'll see it kind of, tails off until it reaches a low point, which signals our body and brain it's time to wake up. So the ability to, this is why, if you're exercising or doing a lot of physical activity on a particular day, it's easier to fall asleep. I find that the couple of weeks at the end of my season, when I take a couple of weeks off, my sleep requirement goes down substantially. But especially when it's hot out and training, and doing a job that's very physical, you build up a lot of sleep pressure. There's no problem going to sleep. During the school year, I rarely make it past 9 o'clock ever, because you just get tired all the time. But this is how it works. So there's our chemicals build up, in our body signaling sleep. And so if we can start to control these and understand this is going to allow us to get more consistent sleep, which is very important. Okay, so some of the terms here, sleep pressure is a buildup, as we wake up. The other term is sleep latency, because we'll talk a little bit about these, as we go forward. Sleep latency is the time it takes to go from fully awake to asleep. So usually 10-15 minutes is about kind of average or normal. It's on the time you go to sleep, how long it takes. So if you're sitting there tossing and turning, that makes it difficult to go to sleep. So some people may take long periods of time, and that can impact their not only the duration of sleep but also the quality. Okay. Deep sleep is where we get our physical recovery. This is where memory and learning occurs. And so when we talk about the trackers, I'll show you some stuff where the ability to chart and measure some of these can be really important and help people in terms of managing this, because the term, if we measure it, we manage it. But what I've also learned is by measuring it, sometimes people get anxious about it because so it doesn't work for them. But for most people, if we can get some sort of measurement on this, it can be very helpful. And our REM sleep occurs later at night, and it aids in our memory and our mood. So some sleep strategies. There's 59% of all athletes have no strategy to overcome or change bad sleep habits. So what I've learned is that we all have habits and we all have routines. Some are good, some are not so good. And what I like with working with athletes is athletes are very routine oriented anyway. So now we're just adding different routines or tweaking their routines to get the outcomes that we want. But creating strategies and routines, I said in the beginning, habits, routines, and systems are really important. We all have them. It's just creating the ones that we want to manipulate or to create the behaviors or the outcomes that we're seeking. So some of the things we have here, some of the circadian, the levers, or these are the things that affect our sleep. So we have light and dark. Even the slightest bit of light that's coming in when you're sleeping can have a negative effect on your melatonin levels and your ability to sleep or get into deep sleep. One of the habits that we use, I spent a lot of time traveling with athletes around the world, competing. And one of the things you start to do is you're spending lots of times in hotels is how to start to manipulate that. And one of the things that always annoys me is the bright lights in the hallway in a hotel, the lights that come under the door. So we always would take like a towel from the bathroom and kind of plug that up. Sleep masks are a wonderful thing. And, we have that old vision of the old dark sleep mask, but they make some now that are super comfortable. I started playing around with this a couple years ago and absolutely love it. The ability to block out all light in a very comfortable way. And that would be from, clock radios or some sort of clock in there, television. Could be light coming in from behind the curtains or blinds. So really creating a dark environment will really help, sleep quality. Regular sleep and wake times. This is really important. And again, this is another something that some of these trackers can measure easily. But the goal is you want to have about 30 minutes, 7 days a week, all the time, if you can. Obviously, things are going to happen, events are going to happen, you can't, but our goal is to be as consistent with this as possible. And so, that means that, if we're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning on the weekdays, it might not be beneficial for your sleep to be getting up at 9 or 10 o'clock on the weekends. And again, this is something we talk with young athletes. We'll talk about social, what they call social jet lag, which is a real term, and how that affects it. Nutrition and food timing. Obviously you don't want to be going to bed if you're starving. You also don't want to be going to bed having a large meal. So knowing when to eat and what to eat, how long before you go to sleep can have an impact on your quantity and your quality of your sleep. So figuring that out is, again, and a lot of this becomes in trial and error and developing, basic routines. Exercise and movement, can be really good. So sometimes doing some walks or things, later in the day, which can help facilitate sleep. But when you exercise may be impactful. If you're doing it later in the evening or, 7 o'clock or something like that, depending on what time you go to bed, may have a negative effect. So some people can work out in the evening and it really helps them go to sleep, and other people it does not. So figuring out, they'll feel like they're wired and they're wide awake, which is something with athletes, professional athletes playing night games. Oftentimes they may need, 3 or 4 hours to unwind. And now you're looking at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning by the time they'll go to sleep. But once they're playing those night games all the time, they get into that rhythm. So creating those routines that help, foster what you need based upon your schedule is important. And temperature is important, raising the thermostat, awakening, gradually decreasing and keeping it cool. Down here in Florida, it means we got the, ACs running a lot, but the idea is keeping that temperature cool. We know that, cooler temperatures really help facilitate us falling asleep and staying asleep well. So there's some of the important indicators for getting good sleep. Now we're going to shift into some of the hurdles. So by now you're like, okay, I got it. This is important. Now, what do we do with it? So some of the common hurdles we see is not enough time to get everything done in the day. And I think this happens with most people. But the idea is when we start prioritizing it and we make it an important part, then obviously we'll find a way to get this done. Trouble falling asleep, can't stay asleep, too many things running through your head, too stressed, social media, poor planning, no time to exercise, and then the environment. So these are all things that we can control. One of the things once I started working in this area, I started realizing that then it obviously rolled into planning and prioritizing, making sure you get the most important things done in the day so you don't have them, hanging over your head. Again, when we're talking with the kids, athletes at school, we found this out, that kids like, well, I'm going to, they'll come to me after we've had these conversations with the team or discussions, and they'll say, hey, Coach Tim, I'm not gonna be able to go to sleep till late tonight because I got a project, a 500-word essay I got to get done tonight. And I'm like, well, was it assigned this afternoon? No, it was assigned 3 weeks ago. So teaching, prioritizing, getting stuff done so you're not always under crunch time. And this is where the concept of deep work and shallow work. Deep work is highly cognitive work, the real important stuff we need to focus on. Shallow work would fall in stuff like watching TV, social media, Facebook, that stuff. Making sure we're doing the important things and leaving the not important things, done, so we don't procrastinate, so we run out of time in our day. So sleep becomes an essential part. Stuff like phones are and tablets and computers are the worst in this. So making sure we're controlling those environments can be real important to carving out that time so we have enough time to get quality sleep. And the same would go with the exercise. Exercise is important as well. But again, we need to plan our time and making sure we know where we're going to be doing things. And again, it's a constant work in progress. I mean, I think every season, whether it's a summertime, wintertime, may change. The better you get at this and the more results that you see, it's going to help create the motivation to drive this. Whoops, I'm sorry. Okay, so some of the ways or tips that you can do, and I don't advise doing all of these at once. Maybe pick one or two that are most important to you, and then hopefully, if they start to work, you can add another one. But some of the ways that we can improve our sleep quality, this is a tough one for virtually everybody, and I can't honestly say that I do this myself. Maybe an hour before, but turning off electronics and 1 to 2 hours before going to bed. This may not be possible for a lot of people because you're getting information coming in, but creating some sort of control around this can be important. I try to shut everything down about an hour before, and then I'll read or do something that's a little bit more relaxing, which helps put me into a good place to go to sleep. If you can keep your phones, keep the phones out of the bedroom, that's great. So it's not beeping and buzzing and texting. I don't think maybe adults do this a lot, but I certainly know kids do this a lot. But having some control over that, I think, or getting better at that is important. A cool, dark room, improves sleep quality. We talked about the light. We talked about making sure the temperature is in a good place. Ceiling fans work really well to circulate the air as well to keep it cool. Wearing blue blocking glasses 1 or 2 hours before sleep, because the blue light that we get out of our electronics and TVs suppresses melatonin, which makes it difficult to actually fall asleep. And so, just a couple of years ago, blue blocking glasses were all like these funky looking goggles that were yellow tinted and kind of ugly looking. But now they make, clear lens glasses. And I've seen a lot of good results with this because it just helps bring people down, and they can be used all the time. And actually, these are reading glasses. These are a clear lens. They're blue blockers, and I use them all the time. Not only is it good for our eyes, but again, it helps. So we get that melatonin starts to kick in the evening when we start to bring the lights down and cool the temperatures down to allow us to get in a good position to fall asleep when we want to. We have eye masks to block in to block out the light. These are great. I mean, I started using eye masks. We're traveling, and this is again also related to this research in sleep. We've done a lot of work on jet lag, circadian rhythms when we were flying back and forth from the US to Europe, probably every 2 to 3 weeks to compete. The time zone changes, the change in circadian rhythms could affect performance dramatically. So we started doing research and figuring this out. That's when we started using eye masks, and it was great to be able to fall asleep on planes. We then kind of used it to be able to control stuff when we got where we were going, to kind of shift our sleep, sleep times. And I've kind of continued using them now, and with pretty good results. Daily training. Number of studies show that exercise during the day improves sleep. Working out in the evening may disrupt it. Whatever works for people, the key is consistency. Not everybody either in their schedule or wants to work out in the morning. But we do know that people who exercise, first thing in the morning have a better adherence. And the other nice thing is, if you plan to work out in the morning and it doesn't happen, you have an opportunity maybe some other time during the day to get that in. Whereas if you're planning in the evening, if something disrupts that, it's kind of lost. But again, whatever works for people, not everybody's a morning person. Some people work better, do better in the evening, and maybe it doesn't affect their sleep. But if it does affect their sleep in a negative way, then looking at morning times or something may be helpful. And also developing a routine before bed. that allows your body and mind to slow down. This might be one of the big, what I've found is the big takeaways. Having some sort of nighttime standard routine can be real important to help foster putting your body and your mind in a place to get good quality sleep. And I'd suggest once you start to create one, you actually write it down. And I think it's important for the first 3 to 4 weeks to actually try to follow it as closely as possible so it becomes habit. One of the things that I picked up, in my reading and my research on this was I had read, listen to athletes and what they do to get sleep. And one of the things that Kobe Bryant was big on, taking a hot shower about an hour before he went to sleep. I thought that was pretty unique, and I've seen other athletes say the same thing. So I started, trying that, and I try to do that every single night, and it has really helped. And that becomes part of my normal, sleep routine, as well as putting electronics away an hour before, and using blue light glasses, and reading. I try to read every day. I find right before I go to bed, reading for 30 to 45 minutes tends to really relax me, and it's something I look forward to. So that's create a normal routine. Now, it doesn't happen every day, but the more days that I do it, it starts to reinforce that, and you start to look forward to that, and your body really starts to get comfortable with that. Talk a little bit about social jet lag. So what's social jet lag? This is an actual term. And what happens is our body reacts the same way to if we wake up later in the day. So, typically this would be a weekend. And, if you look at, teenagers, and actually a lot of adults too, but college students, so they may have to get up early during the weekdays, and the weekend they may get up a lot later. Well, our body physically and psychologically reacts as if we had gone multiple time zones. So if we wake up 3 hours on the weekend later than we do during the weekday, it's like the equivalent of flying to Europe in terms of how it affects us. Which probably explains why most people don't like Mondays. But this is an important factor. And again, this goes back to consistency, trying to stay within that sleep and wake time of about 30 minutes a day, if you can. It's a good time. That's probably a good point to bring up about, the topic of napping. Naps can be really good. I actually read a whole book on the science of napping, but here's really quick takeaways is that if you take a nap, usually 20, and actually they found benefit as much as, believe it or not, 5 to 10 minutes can be beneficial, but 20 to 30 minutes is usually pretty good in the fact that it will not interrupt your nighttime sleep. So if you slept for, say you took an hour nap or an hour and a half nap during the day, is that the equivalent of an extra hour at night? And the answer to that is no. It does help, but they're not equal. If you sleep, the reason for they say 20 to 30 minutes, after you go about 30 minutes, your body, you start to go into a deeper sleep cycle, which is why if you take a 45 or 60-minute nap, you may wake up feeling worse than when you started, because you're already going into a deep cycle. They say if you're going to sleep longer than that, we tend to sleep in approximately 90-minute cycles. But if we do a 90-minute cycle nap, that may have a negative impact on our nightly sleep. The 20 to 30 minute this is a good tip. I actually learned this from Major League Baseball players who often will take a nap in the afternoon because they're playing night games all the time. Is called a nappuccino. So the idea is this: you have a cup of coffee right before you take a nap, and the trick is it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the caffeine to start to kick in. And so what you do is, so when you're waking up from that nap, and a good thing is setting an alarm, to kind of bring you up out of that, but setting an alarm to bring you out of that. And oftentimes you'll wake up pretty alert and ready to go. There's nothing worse than taking a nap and being groggy. During the summertime, I swim in the afternoon, and I use this every single day. I'll try to take a short nap before I go to the pool. So I have a small cup of coffee, wake up, boom, ready to go. So it does work pretty well. Okay? There's a good bonus for today. Trackers. These are great. I talked about the Zeo. So now a lot of that technology is now in our Apple Watches. Fitbit does some really great stuff with their sleep. Apple has apps that you can get for your watch. And there's another one, Whoop, which is just a band. You'll see a lot of professional athletes. It doesn't have a watch face. It's just a band. And that syncs up to an app, and you get all kinds of data. You get a lot of data. But the Apple or Fitbit are probably the two most popular ones. And these are really good ways that we can, again, if we measure it, we manage it. So we get a pretty good sense of what we're working with. It gives us great feedback. But again, if it motivates somebody, it's really good. If it creates anxiety because it's being measured, then it may be not so good. And the other one which are trackers is heart rate variability. So we'll talk about these briefly. So here's a little hard to see here, but to give you an idea of some of the, what you see on your phone from the Apple sleep apps. And what you're seeing here, on the left is really showing multiple days of sleep. It will give your, when you go to sleep, the time you're in each different type of, sleep cycle, and the type of sleep you're getting. So again, you can manage it. We talked that deep sleep is our physical and mental recovery. And so deep sleep is one of the things that I like to track. I like to look at sleep quality and deep sleep, because with this, we can get to the point of too much information. So what are the 1 or 2 or even 3 pieces of data that are most important to you at this particular time? I think consistency, consistency of sleep, quality of sleep, and maybe deep sleep are 3 really good metrics that you can pull off that. And again, these devices will actually show you the consistency. As I go to, this is actually mine. This is from my Fitbit. This comes off my phone. But you'll see is you got different days. And again, you can set goals. So say the goal is 8 hours or 7 hours. You can see how you're stacking up. This middle graph or chart here will show you the different stages of sleep. And so you can see how much you're spending in each. And then on the right, we've got our sleep schedule, and you can see how the consistency is stacking up. These also will give you your averages per week, average sleep score or quality of sleep, as well as your average time of sleep each and every week. So again, we could start driving this, and if you're motivated by looking at stats, then this becomes really good for a lot of people. Another one, which is very, probably less likely known, is heart rate variability. This has been around for a long time. I've been measuring this personally for about 12 years now. And when I first heard about it, I went to, athletes of mine who were doctors and physicians and says this, viable, type of method of measuring. And this really comes from cardiac rehab. It's been around for a long time. Once they were able to put this heart rate variability into an app form that use a heart rate strap or a finger sensor, then it really became, and actually I got a finger sensor right here, so you got a finger sensor, and I just basically put this on my finger first thing in the morning, plug it into my phone. And then what it will do is it's about a 1 minute measures my heart rate. So what it is that it measures the time gaps between heartbeats, okay? And what that is your ability to adapt to stress relates to your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. I wish I'd paid more attention in biology class when we did this. I never thought this was relevant information back when I was in school. But real simple, our parasympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight. And sympathetic is fight or flight, and parasympathetic is rest or digest. These 2 systems work off of each other. When people are highly stressed, they're may be in a sympathetic phase almost entirely. When they relax, they can pull themselves out of that. So we need that balance. Our ability of our body to adjust to this stress is reflected in our heart rate variability, and we can measure this to see if we're in a state of readiness to do, heavy work, heavy training. And in a low HRV, it can hamper stress. I've found that if I get a low HRV score for a couple of days, even though I feel fine, it might mean I'm on the verge of getting sick or getting injured. So measuring this it can be important. Here's what it would look like on the phone. We've got a daily score here on the left, and it shows a score. And again, you have all these other things that you could put in there if you wanted to measure, again, sleep quality, mood, diet, whatever it is. And then the larger chart here, this is a trending, and we see this is really from over the last 3 or 4 months. You could see how it trends based upon, it's not just training. And I think the reason I started using this for athletes is that we can now measure with heart rate monitors, power meters, all these devices. We can measure training load or training stress of anything we want with great accuracy. I didn't have the ability to measure the other 22 or 23 hours of an athlete's day of the stress load, family, relationships, job, everything else that's going on. So if you take the training or the stress load of a person 24 hours a day and can lump it into one number, that's what HRV is. And so anything that we do can have an effect on this. If we sleep better, if we're hydrating, if we're even just how we think, how we're, our mood is, will have an effect on this. And so what we're ultimately looking for is an upward trend. When I start seeing a downward trend, one, might want to know, what that is. I see this happening at August, September, the beginning of the school year, when we got a lot going on, it tends to start to slide down. You go through the semester, it starts to slide up. Over breaks, it starts to slide up. The goal is to try to keep it level and keep it going up. So we're not really reacting day to day as much as you're looking at the big picture. If you have a hard workout or a stressful day or a lot of meetings, you might see it go down the next day. So that's going to tell you I need to put some concerted effort into making sure that I'm resting and recovering. Otherwise, injuries and illness always seems to fall at the worst possible time. By having a little bit of insight and control, we can help start to manipulate some of these things. Another thing that works, we talk about, putting into the parasympathetic nervous system. This was great because I actually just saw this yesterday and had to put this slide in this morning. Some simple things you can do to help, bring up your parasympathetic nervous system is just, controlled breathing work. And so one of the things is the 5, and so I put 3 of these on here. One is the 5-5. It's a 5. It's nasal breath. You breathe in through your nose slowly for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. You can do this in the car. You can do this in between meetings. You can do it on phone calls. Heck, you can be doing it right now. Another one that's probably an easier one. The more difficult one, the hard one is the box, which is 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, 4 hold. I find this difficult, but it can be done. And then there's the 4, 7, 8, 4 seconds in, hold for seconds, and then 8 out. That's very difficult, but any type of controlled breathing helps stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, brings your stress level down. And notice, watch sporting events, whether it's a baseball player coming up to bat, they'll take deep breaths. You watch, golfers do this, tennis players before they serve. Okay, it's a very normal thing, but having this in your, in your toolbox to use and pull out whenever you want can be very beneficial. So now we talk a little bit about developing habits and routines. Again, we devise these routines, write them down. These will lead into habits. We start to stack our habits. We start to create, really, big impact. And so some of them, there's in no particular order, but some of the skills that we're starting to develop is tracking. So maybe start to accumulate the data, be aware of these things when you're going to sleep, when you're waking up, what your sleep score is, for, let's just say for a month. From there, we can work on creating better consistency, planning our schedule, becoming a little bit more disciplined and making sure we're trying to get to bed at the right time and getting up at the right time. And a good tip, people say, well, how do I know if I'm getting enough sleep? Easiest thing is if you need an alarm clock to wake up, you're probably not getting enough sleep. Okay, you can use an alarm clock as your backup, but if you need to get woken up or have an alarm clock or hit the snooze button 3 times, I'm not sure why they put snooze buttons anyways. It actually doesn't do any good. You're probably not getting enough sleep. Okay, creating a good environment or manipulating your environment from optimal sleep. Light, temperature. And then creating sleep routines, writing them down, creating the habits, creating the systems that you're going to need to help facilitate this. And our ultimate goal is just to move the dial, okay? Move things a little bit further forward. Some of the things that can affect this, and the flywheel effect, this comes from Jim Collins, and I forgot which book he wrote. I want to say Good to Great, but don't quote me on that. But the flywheel effect is this: once you start momentum, it's easier to go to the next step. Once you start to see results, it's easier to kind of keep that going and drive that. Another great term, I found this recently, is productive meditation. Is doing something physical to allow you to focus attention on a single professional problem. This is like if you're going out for a bike ride, going out for a run with no particular purpose. Let your mind wander, and you can do great problem solving. It's great for creative stuff. I train every day for a couple hours, and I probably do my best work while I'm out there training because things just come to me and come solutions. You end up leaving yourself a lot of text messages and voicemails and audio messages to yourself for fear you might forget them. Fixed schedule productivity, setting a firm goal on not working past certain times. This is difficult, especially if you're not used to it, but working backwards to find productive strategies, finding times to shut down. You can't be on 24/7. It's difficult, and long-term, it might not be productive. So figuring out what works for you in your situation to create some productive time, some hard stops. So you're not taking text messages, answering stuff. Obviously, there's emergencies that go on, but making sure it doesn't become a daily thing. In shallow work, limiting the shallow work that you do that can become time wasters. Those time wasters take away from the important stuff, and they take away from time that could be devoted towards quality recovery and sleep. So some of the sleep skills development, creating a 3 to 4 month plan for yourself. And again, each month, working on these. So it's funny, I kind of struggled on when I came up with a topic on this, or the title of it, I kind of waffled between, sleep matters or start with sleep. But one of the big takeaways I want you to see is that sleep is not the end of the day. And when you create this mind shift, I've found it's worked really well. So we tend to go through our work day or go through our day, and then sleep is what's left over at the end of the day. Instead, start to think that when you go to bed at night, that's not the end of today. That's the beginning of tomorrow. So we're recovering, we're setting ourselves up for a great day the next day. Simple mind shift, but I've found this to be very, very important and productive for people. We want to develop our skills and our routines. Okay, they're going to help foster this and be flexible, yet be consistent. And again, we want to move this dial gradually and consistently, and also to help those around us, because it's going to impact a bunch of other people. So that's what I have covered. I'm going to go and let's see if do we have any questions in there?
One of the questions was if we can share the slides with everyone after.
Oh yeah, no problem.
And we are recording this, and we will make this available for our membership. I know not everyone who wanted to view could be on the call, so but we do have a number of folks that are on the call. So if anybody has any questions right now, they can certainly put it into the chat mechanism. People are looking at the kind of a technical question about Apple device and Android. I'm not sure. You work on an Apple device, I think, Tim.
I'm using a Fitbit, but we're working with the Apple. I mean, one of the things I started looking at is, we're working with our athletes and our kids at school is really like most of them have some device, and I've found it really important. If they're measuring it, it becomes really, really important. And it's nice to say, you can lecture people or talk to people about it, but if you say, hey, pull out your phone and look at your data, now it becomes it's very tangible, because otherwise, sleep is very subjective, it's out there. But now if we could start to look at some real important information that comes out of it, like if you make a change in your sleep routine, and all of a sudden your deep sleep goes from like 20 minutes to 30 minutes and you're feeling better, you've got something that's very tangible that you've made an improvement. Otherwise, it's just kind of sitting out there.
Interesting. So a lot of really, really good information. Very, very interesting that it is applicable to athletes, also to people in the workplace, being able to really control all these different factors. And I think sleep is something people often don't think about. People spending a tremendous amount of time thinking about nutrition and some things like that, but the sleep often gets ignored.
I agree. So I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot more on this in the coming years. It's probably just the start of it. But again, the parallels between, and I always use athletes because that's the world that I live in, but the parallels between athletes and people in the business world are absolutely the same.
We have a comment that someone loves the Nappuccino term. I love that as well. That I think Amanda and I we're going to try the Nappuccino. We might even have a Nappuccino hour here at the chamber. So everybody can...
if that happens, my work was successful.
And the breathing patterns too are pretty fascinating as well.
Well, that's what I kind of want. I want some simple things that people, you want something that someone can try today. And then you get stuff that they can build out. And the idea is you just can't give out information. Information is great because it's like with exercise, you feel like, yes, I should exercise. Okay, but how do you get someone from point A to point B? How do you get them to try it? And, some simple things that people can try might help them start to implement some of these things that can have, big impact for them.
Yeah, it is interesting with kids, and we have teenagers, and we struggle. It seems like the teens teens want to wake up later and they want to stay up later. And they seem to have a different pattern perhaps than adults.
No, that's absolutely true. And they call them is like owls and larks, but it's a circadian rhythm thing. And teenagers typically have that later shift. And some school systems have actually changed their their start times and of the school day based upon this because of their ability to learn at different times of the day. So yeah, that's interesting is that actually occurs. And I think the habits we set up as younger can carry over, but some people are definitely morning people and some are nighttime people. And that's kind of a circadian rhythm thing.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to see if you could kind of dispel this myth, one way or the other. I've heard from some people who feel that as people age, they need more sleep, and some folks say that they're functioning on less sleep. Is there any research to go along with that?
Yeah, a little bit, but not as much as you would think. People think automatically that as we get older, we need less sleep, and a lot of that might be geared towards being less active, and that sleep that they're getting might not be good quality. And that's actually what led me to start to look at this, is because as I get older, it's like, do I need less sleep, or is that just a function of not getting enough sleep because I thought that was normal? And if I got more sleep, will that allow me to recover? Because one of the things we know as we get older, from an athletic standpoint, we can still train hard. We just can't recover as quickly. Why, masters athletes get more injuries because their muscles, tendons aren't recovering fast enough. So if we could get more and better quality sleep, might that reverse that process a little bit? And the answer to that is yes. But we have to work a bit harder at it. But I think if you're really tired, then you're going to sleep pretty well for the most part. So this is where the exercise, the nutrition, and the sleep really all merge together, because if you're exercising on a regular basis, you're probably going to be a little bit more tired. If you've got more energy, you're doing more things, you're working harder, you tend to sleep, harder, sleep better. So they're not, they're intertwined and not mutually exclusive.
And Tim, do you have any opinions on taking supplements, things like melatonin? How does that work with us?
Yeah, good question. It's actually, I'm going to make a note because I'm going to add this into this presentation next time. The thing with melatonin is a lot of people take melatonin, and there's a couple of problems with it. Is that you can get it over the counter, but even if it says, like, for example, 3 milligrams, it can range widely. And because melatonin is a hormone, that can start to mess with other systems. So not something you want to be doing on a regular basis. If people are supplementing with it, it should be as little as possible to allow you to get to go to sleep. The only time I've ever used it was when I came back from the Beijing Olympics, being an 11-hour time zone. I was messed up for a couple of weeks from sleeping. So I actually took it for a little bit to help reset the circadian rhythm in my my body clock. But it's like anything, you got to be real careful with that, because it can affect people differently. And because it's sold over the counter, people can take too much of it or become reliant on it. So, my advice is often, if you do use it, use as little as necessary, but just know that it can range widely because it isn't as closely controlled.
And it seems like the dosage varies greatly. What you can get over the counter, the number of milligrams varies hugely.
Yeah, the number varies, and even what it says it is can vary as well. So there lies the problem. Something says it's 3 milligrams, and it might actually be 5 or 6, which can be double or triple. So very hard to control. So something to be watchful for. I wouldn't say like never use it, but you just got, like anything, it's a tool. It's got to be used very sparingly and very controlled.
Great. And Joanna Martin put something, and Johanna Martin from Transcend and Montverde put something into the chat that at Transcend they have the blue tech glasses for blocking the blue light. Those are available there. So I think I'll be visiting Transcend because I think that's a huge factor, that blue light and I think you make a lot of good points about scheduling. And I know a lot of us, we had a call early this morning and I was answering emails about it at 10:30 last night, but probably having a little bit more control of our schedule. So I think a lot of us creep into working all times of the night and weekend and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because I kind of want to temper that because I want to say, like, take time, work less. But I'm like, you're talking to business leaders, so you can't say that necessarily, other than saying you might want to look at this because it's a quality quantity thing. And I think with the blue light glasses, not only is it from a sleep perspective, but just an eye strain and eye health is a benefit there too.
Great. That's awesome. Some more comments, that this has been extremely helpful, excellent presentation, and I think the circadian rhythm is very, very interesting, and that was commented on as well. So a lot of really great information. We're excited to be able to share this with our entire membership. We appreciate you bringing this different topic. We try to have a lot of different webinar topics, and this is certainly something we haven't explored here at the chamber before, but I think I have notes of several takeaways that I have. So this is really good stuff, Tim. So we really appreciate anything. We've almost reached our 1 hour mark, but anything else you want to share, Tim?
Yeah, but thank everybody for taking the time. I know everyone's got busy schedules, so I truly appreciate the invitation to come and talk about this, because I love breaking out of our athletic world, because I think it's important to share some of that stuff. But if anyone has any additional questions, I got my my email address here. Feel free to shoot me an email, because there's a lot of other the circadian rhythm thing was a whole other branch. It would take longer to go off. There's a lot of tangents one could go off on, but hopefully just kind of enlighten and open the door to this and give people some ideas they can start to explore on their own, and hopefully it helps people improve their life, the quality of life and their enjoyment. So really thank you guys for inviting me. Thanks for everybody being on here. If there's anything I can help answer in the future, feel free to contact me. Let me know.
Thank you, Tim. We really appreciate you being here, and congratulations on some more great work and another national championship for Montverde basketball team this last week. Is really exciting to see what's happening up on the Montverde campus.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, 5 minutes after that game was over, I had my notebook out making my notes on what we need to do it better next year. It doesn't end.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.